Hello, good evening, and welcome everybody, at least virtually. My name is Federica Massasaluzzo. I'm a professor at the EADA Business School, and I will start the webinar tonight. I would like to start with a famous mantra among sustainable designers. It goes, if it can't be reduced, reused, repaired, rebuilt, refurbished, refinished, resold, recycled, or composted, then it should be restricted, designed, or removed from production. This sounds like the word of a designer, maybe a creative one, or a manufacturer, but truly is what a folk singer used to sing at the end of the 80s, and his name was Pete Seeger. But still, after almost 30 years, we are here talking about the same concept, that is eco-design or sustainable product design. The idea is to move beyond the words of the folk singer and to define the concept a little bit more in detail. So for scholars, the idea of eco-design is the ability of designers to move beyond the trade-off between corporate goals and environmental goals. So the overall idea is to develop a product that not only is good for the environment, but creates financial benefits for the company. And one important element in this subject is the life cycle of the product. It is something that is worth mentioning because it's going to be important also for our presentations today. The life cycle of the product is divided in phases, which are production, distribution, use, and end of life. And the argument is that adopting environmental criteria in the design of products allowed reducing the environmental impact in all the phases and hence in the whole life cycle of the product. But there is a problem that scholars are typically facing. That is, there is a lack of examples of practical implementations of eco-design. And this is where we come today with the second seminar of the cycle of 5 webinars organized by EINA, EADA, Barcelona Global, and McKinsey, discussing with 3 thought leaders on eco-design, what are the real practical examples that they can share and how they can pave the way for sustainable and plausible future. So I will cut myself without any further ado. I will leave the floor to Manuel Siracqui, director of the EINA IDEA, the think tank and art programming platform of Fundació EINA, who will introduce our first keynote speaker. Thank you, Manuel.
Hi, Fede. Thank you for the introduction. And hi, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here today and to speak to all of you. Just to introduce Julia Kerner. She's a designer, an artist, a researcher that I really admire. We've worked in the past in presenting her work in the framework of exhibitions. And I think today is a great opportunity to listen to her and her creative process in the shared territory of research in technology, design, art, ecologies. So I don't want to be long in my introduction, but I would like to read to you a few key elements in Julia's trajectory, which is extremely remarkable. So Julia Kerner is an award-winning Austrian designer working at the convergence of architecture, product, and fashion design. She is internationally recognized for design innovation in 3D printing, and her designs have been featured in National Geographic magazine, Vice, Wired, and the New York Times, amongst other publications. In 2019, Archinect, a media outlet, named Julia Kerner Architecture's Queen of 3D Fabrication. So that's a high title for 3D fabrication. Museums and institutions which have exhibited her work include the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the Met, the Art Institute of Chicago, High Museum of Art in Atlanta, Philadelphia Museum of Art, Palais des Beaux-Arts in Brussels, Museum of Applied Arts, MAC in Vienna, Ars Electronica, among others. The constantly intriguing aspect of Julia's work is its embodiment of a beautiful organic aesthetic, and I would say that she helped us learn from the forms of nature or the zoomorphisms in our ecosystems. She's the founder of JK Design, her company specializing in digital design for 3D printing, And in 2015, she launched an entirely 3D printed, ready-to-wear collection entitled Sporophyte. Her collaborations involve 3D printed fashion pieces developed with haute couture houses for Paris Fashion Week, and 3D printed costumes for Hollywood entertainment productions, such as Marvel's production Black Panther, in collaboration with Ruth Carter, which recently won an Oscar for Best Costume Design. She further recently also collaborated with Swarovski, the jewelry company, very famous, on a showpiece which displays continuous strive of innovation and the early developments in Swarovski's 3D printing technology with glass. Julia Körner was born in Salzburg, Austria, and she received her master's degrees in architecture from the University of Applied Arts in Vienna and the Architectural Association in London. She's currently based in Los Angeles and Salzburg, and has previously practiced in London and New York in design. Since 2012, she's a faculty member at the Architecture and Urban Design Department, UCLA. And since 2021, she's the director of summer programs at UCLA AUD. She previously held academic appointments at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna, again, Lund University in Sweden, and the Architectural Association in France and Jordan. So, Julia, thank you so much for being here. I will leave the floor to you, and I really look forward to what you tell us, and there will be certainly questions from us and all the attendees at a later stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manuel, for the very kind introduction, and very nice to meet you all. Thanks for having me at this webinar today, and I hope in the future we will also meet in person. I'm going to share my screen now. So as Manuel already kind of introduced me, I am the founder and director of JK Design GmbH, which is a company situated in Austria, Salzburg and Vienna, and also a co-founder of JKLA LLC in Los Angeles. And this year we founded a new brand, JK3D. I'm also in the academia. I teach since 2012 at UCLA in the architecture department. So today I want to give you a brief insight into my work, which crosses between architecture, product design, and fashion design. And I want to kind of dial back when I was a student in 2007 at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. I studied with Greg Lynn. At the same time, Wolf Prix and Zaha Hadid were professors at the Angewandte. And I was kind of taught in the early stages of digital design and utilizing the computer and also 3D printing technology. So it was the first time the university acquired a 3D printer. I was intrigued by what you can potentially do with those machines and how you can directly output prototypes out of the machine. I engaged a lot with writing algorithms, understanding how you can mathematically resolve things within the computer and how you can design with these tools, and got exposed in my career a lot to, besides 3D printing, also robotic technologies and how to kind of implement them in the design process. So I usually really work with those machines and kind of integrate them in the design ideas, what materials I work with, how the design is going to look like, and how the outcome essentially is perceived. So a lot of my focus really is within the 3D printing technology and the material research and what we can essentially produce with these technologies. In the early stages, I also was very interested in the direct translation, moving from rapid prototyping to manufacturing. And that's essentially 3D printing exists since more than 40 years. And only in the, I would say, last 15 years, really, there has been a huge push in the translation from utilizing 3D printing no longer only to produce prototypes, but actually to use them in manufacturing in several other industries. And in fashion especially, I thought it is very interesting to look at it because it allows me to create something three-dimensionally in the computer. So on the left, you see the final results, and on the right, you see the actual 3D design in the computer, and to directly output them in 3D. So there's no needs of steps of in between kind of changing those 3D forms. And I kind of applied those in several different collections I designed and researched in my own brand, as well as accessories. As Manuel mentioned, I also collaborated with other companies such as Swarovski on innovating on their new technology with 3D printing with glass. I collaborated with Dutch fashion designer Iris van Herpen on 3 of the designs which were shown in the Metropolitan Museum and across the whole United States in several museums. And kind of also had the opportunity, which kind of led through working with Paris haute couture houses, to working with Ruth Carter on the Black Panther film. And it was really exciting because all in a sudden I realized, well, only a few people can go and see a haute couture show in Paris, but with film and the film industry, you have a much broader reach and you can reach a much broader audience. And so being part of this movement of Afrofuturism and kind of the empowerment of the Black community was a really amazing experience beyond creating or using these technologies in the movie environment. So exciting was also to see how Ruth Carter was the first African-American woman to win an Oscar in this category, and where it kind of led within her career, but also in my own. And I'm going to show you now 3 projects to kind of in more specifics. The first one is the Cicle jacket, which I designed in 2019 for the Chromorpho collection, which was shown as part of the Designs for Futures exhibition in Philadelphia Museum of Art and in the Walker Art Center. And I have a video I would like to show you. It is inspired by the Madagascan sunset butterfly. Often I'm inspired by things I find in the natural environment. I then photograph those artifacts and translate those geometries and mathematical logics, in this case, the microscopic hair, which you find on the butterfly wing, into an algorithm which can be read by the computer and then translates it into three-dimensional geometry. In this case, I worked with Stratasys, who 3D printed the geometry directly on textile. It was a new innovation we kind of together came up with, and there was, here's a video. So the exciting thing about this was that we didn't use any water in the process of creating this. All the colors are directly 3D printed into the design, and I made the geometry really simplified so that there wouldn't be any support material used in the process. And so with this technology, I kind of understood how to work between the computer and the machines they use, but I also was keen on optimizing the process and the idea behind it, and how we can kind of optimize the design and the geometry to not have really zero waste material, essentially. And in the Cicle jacket, I kind of thought there was a really amazing opportunity to think that process further. And then within a 9-month research called Reframe in Linz, Austria, which was funded by the European Horizon 2020 grant, I developed the Arid Collection, which is the second project I want to share with you. In the Arid Collection, there's no sewing involved. The entire design of the dress is buttoned together, because I thought, why not 3D print the buttons onto the fabric if we already 3D printing geometry on the fabric. And so I developed this kind of collection, which is made out of 36 pieces. And these pieces can all be kind of buttoned together in different ways. I developed 3D scans, which kind of map the geometry of the human body. And so with 3D scanning, you can kind of automate the process of getting the human shape and form. And you can eventually move away from different sizes and really can customize it for the human body so that the shapes and forms adapt and are automated. So a lot of focus in this research was kind of developing a workflow of how to move from a 3D scan of a human body to the kind of geometrical development in the computer and the adaptation to the human body, and then the output of the 3D printing. Again, in this case, I worked with 3D printing on fabric. I used hemp material, which is uses reduced water consumption. There's no color dye in it. The color is directly 3D printed onto the design. And the final project I want to share with you is the high clutch, a product I've developed over the past 2 years with my partner, Kai Salravi, and we founded a new brand, JK3D, under which we will launch the high clutch. The high clutch is a product which is entirely 3D printed, including its clasp and hinge and the bag, like a pocket inside. It's entirely produced in-house in our studio here in Los Angeles, California. We use solar power to run our machines. There is no water involved. Everything is made out of a single material. We are also right now researching, working with plant-based resin so that it's made out of an organic material. And here you can see the inside, the hinge, the clasp. It won a Red Dot Design Award this year. And I'm really excited about this product because it kind of brings us for the first time closer to this idea. Can we actually produce our products at home? Can we produce it? We can produce it right now in our studio in LA. We are setting up a studio in Vienna right now. To kind of have then the digital file transfer so we can send our designs to Vienna, have it produced locally, on demand. Whenever a customer orders it, one bag is produced. You can print one bag a day if you have one printer. We can produce different colors. We can customize it and personalize it by engraving the name or like 3D printing the name into it. And in the packaging, we also were really keen on like producing this in-house. So we use recycled plastic sheets to vacuum form, and we make the entire packaging in-house. We wanted to eliminate the kind of additional boxing of using additional cardboard boxes, and wanted to develop something which can be used further on as a case. Let's say you travel and want to bring the clutch along, you put it in that case, or even when you want to store it at home. So this is kind of our first product, which we're producing now in series, and we're about to launch it. And yeah, I'm very excited to share my work with you today and look forward to the conversation with the other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. It was really beautiful and inspiring. And the last thing that you mentioned about create the possibility of having on-demand production is like a bomb in the business world, because it's basically offering an alternative to mass production, because you don't need economies of scale to be profitable. You can destroy this massive cost that you have for the first unit of production. So this is a change-making example. Thank you so much. And now from one change-making person to another one, we shift a little bit to the business world, more in the manufacturing, and we will talk to Javier Goyeneche, who has a bachelor degree in business from European Business School, a graduate degree in international marketing at Kellogg School of Management, and he is the founder of the accessories company Fun and Basics and EcoAlf, who everybody knows is a pioneering fashion company in sustainability and innovation. He was also named a social entrepreneur in 2020 by the Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship. So I am very happy to introduce him, and I leave you the floor for a brief presentation. Thank you, Javier. Gracias.
Thank you, Federica. Thank you very much, Pilar, Federica, Manuel, and the rest of the team, and of course, my dear co-panelists. A pleasure to be here. Well, I'm supposed to talk about 8 minutes, so I'm going to do like a brief introduction. Obviously, people who are more into fashion know that fashion is a beautiful world in many sense, but unfortunately one of the most polluting industries in the world. No? It depends how you measure it in terms of water or emissions. It can be the second most polluting industry in the world, or the third or the fourth, but it's always one of the most polluting. No? And why is that so? Well, basically because it has a business model which hasn't been working for too many years. No? It's all about buying, throwing, a new trend every Thursday, discount, promotion, Black Friday. This is creating a huge damage and billions of garments going to landfill every day. Look, I remember just before the pandemic reading, one of the biggest cotton companies in the world burning 4,000 acres of forest in Ethiopia to plant more cotton. So we're crazy, because we're burning the forest to plant cotton, to make t-shirts of €5, which are going to finish in landfill in a big percentage in less than 2 years. And each of those t-shirts uses 2,000 liters of water. So obviously this doesn't work. We are 150,000 more people in the world every day. We're going to be 2 more billion by 2050. And obviously there's not going to be enough landfills, there's not going to be enough forests, and there's definitely not going to be enough water to keep on producing the way we're producing. So there's an urgent need to change. I think we have right now not only an opportunity, but obviously a responsibility to change the business model of fashion. And for that, we have to do it all together. I think we have to do it between companies, between consumers, because some consumers think they don't have strength to change anything, which I absolutely disagree. No, I think consumers have much more strength than they can imagine, and they can show the way to the companies. So they can show, okay, you guys, if you don't go this direction, I won't buy your products. And then obviously to the people who legislate. No? So I think they have to start also taking action in many fields. No? Ecoalf is a Spanish company, small fashion Spanish company, who was created in 2009. Basically, I wanted to create a sustainable fashion company. I believe the most sustainable thing to do was not to keep on using natural resources. So recycling could be a solution if we were to make like a new generation of recycled products with the same quality and design as the best non-recycled. Problem is that when I went to the market in 2009, there were no cool recycled fabrics. Fabrics were only recycling a small percentage, 15, 18, 20% of the content, and they were not very fashionable in terms of texture. So we had to start developing those fabrics, and since then, I think we have developed over 540 different 100% recycled fabrics. I started with an amazing woman south of Taipei in Taichung, which was started recycling plastic bottles to create carpets, and she had a lot of sensibility. And that's how we started. So basically we recycle a lot of different materials. We recycle a lot of plastic bottles, which is polyester. We recycle a lot of discarded fishing nets of nylon 6, which is the most polyamide you can get in the world, and people are not aware, but there's over 650,000 tons of discarded fishing nets in the bottom of the oceans. And unfortunately, a lot of them made by nylon 6, which is top quality polyamide, and those nets can be there for centuries, over 7-8 centuries, creating a lot of damages to marine life. We recycle a lot of used tires. That's a project we do in Spain. We recycle the leftovers of the coffee. So we have a partner in Taiwan who collects the leftovers of the coffee every morning from cafeterias, the humid compound. We dry it out, we convert it into powder, we mix it with plastics polymers, with plastic bottles. And it's fantastic because coffee gives all those natural properties to the fabrics in a natural way. It's anti-odor, it's UV protection, it's fast drying, so you don't have to give it through chemicals. And then we recycle a lot of cotton. That was a big obsession since the beginning. I don't know. So I think some people are not aware that cotton is not very sustainable because it's too intensive in water. I don't know if you had the chance to see the film of Isabel Coixet about the Aral Sea, but when the Russians decided to give water to the cotton plantations in Kazakhstan, it dried out in less than 2 years. It's a complete desert right now. So we started recycling cotton with the leftovers of the factories in 2014. We separate the leftovers by colors. We get a very short, uneven, unstable thread, difficult to work with, but obviously saving a lot of water. And then we recycle a lot of wool, which I'm wearing, or cashmere, which to be honest, Federica, has been recycled since the 19th century, and there's a city in Italy called Prato, which is very famous for recycling wool. No? Probably,
confirm.
Yeah. Probably our most ambitious project is Upcycling the Oceans, which we started in the end of 2014, which was a project to take the waste out of the ocean through the help of the fishermen. That started, we started with 2 fishermen in a little port in Alicante called Villajoyosa, which we gave them a little container to put in their boats. And that waste that gets collected every time they pull up the nets, mixed with all the fish, instead of throwing it back to the ocean, they would put in those containers and take it to the port. Right now, the project, I think we have in Spain, over 3,500 fishermen. Right now, we signed 16 more ports in Greece. We signed the first one in Italy, in Civitavecchia. We have 7 ports ready in Italy to start, but unfortunately, over a year to get the permits. I thought Spain was complicated, but to be honest, compared to Italy, I think it's like Switzerland, because it's been like a nightmare to get the permits. No? And we have the first ones in France ready to start. So we have like this goal. In Spain, we work with 80% of the trawling fleet, taking around 250 tons out of the ocean every year. And our goal by 2025 is to work with over 10,000 fishermen from all the Mediterranean and take over 1,000 tons per year out of the ocean. And the good thing about this is that 68% of everything we take out from the ocean gets back into the system. Basically, 100% of the aluminum, 100% of the glass, 100% of the polypropylene, polyethylene, and PET bottles. Okay. And then, well, you asked me to talk a little bit about eco-design. Well, I think eco-design is essential. No? I think it's a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge for the designing team. Obviously, it's much more difficult for them. So it compromises a lot of things because you have to use as many materials as possible without compromising the design. You have to use recyclable and if preferably recycle also materials. So you have a lot of limitations and you have a lot of challenges. No? So I think it's, well, but it's a way to start. No, I think one of the biggest mistakes I think we've done since we started is that the first time we launched a filament with recycled cotton in 2014, end of 2014, 15, it was 50% recycled cotton from the leftovers and 50% recycled polyester. And we're very happy with that because at the end of the day, the recycled cotton yarn is very difficult to work with, and the polyester would give it an extra strength, so it would allow us to do much more durable products. But I think one of the biggest obsessions of EcoAlf is the end of life cycle of the products, and the fact of mixing cotton with polyester makes it very complicated for the circularity. So we stopped using that yarn already in 2016, and from EcoAlf team, we don't mix filaments, no? And that's a big challenge also for us because it makes a lot of limitations. No? But I think it's very important because, as I said before, I mean, the amount of waste textile industry is creating is unbearable. I think there's going to be a new legislation in Europe probably by January, and there's probably going to be taxes, no, for the fashion companies because of all the waste they're creating. No? Let's see how they divide this taxes in between. How do you do your products and how does the other do your product? No? But let's see how it goes. And then we are about to launch new projects, and we have this collaboration we're doing with Icarbe, which is a furniture company in Valencia, which we have been working for over 2 years. We're going to launch in Salone Mobile, but we decided to wait, so we're launching it now. But I mean, everything is about circularity. So all the sofas, of course, made with EcoAlf fabrics, but at the end of the day, you can separate those sofas in 4 pieces at the end of life cycle. So all of those 4 pieces are easy to recycle. And in the second generation, which we start in February, we are recycling the old mattresses of Spain. Over 1.2 million mattresses go into landfill every year in Spain. So we're taking out the biggest quality filling from the inside to create the interior of the sofa. And the good thing about this is that the factory who's going to recycle those mattresses is 30 kilometers from the sofa factory. So it's a very complete traceability in all the product. No? So it's fantastic. And also, to be honest, we have been working, also over a year with a partner to launch a new wellness line, and the packaging is being the great challenge, because I think packaging has to evolve a lot, no, to create that circularity, and there's a lot of challenges to do what we want to do. No? So for us, eco-design is probably one of the most important issues and topics and challenges inside Ecol. Okay.
Perfect, Javier. I will see what I can do with the Italian fishermen.
No, the fishermen are fantastic. They want to start. The problem is not the fishermen. The problem is the politicians.
With that, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing this experience, and thank you for also stressing the importance of the end of life of the projects, because frequently some brands are promoting them as sustainable and circular because they use recycled material to produce something, but then they are not very clear about what happens when you're done using the product and how you can give new life. So I think that's also an element of awareness that needs to be pushed forward. And if Ecol does it, there's no...
Well, we are invited to many talks around the year about circular economy, and we always say the same thing: we are not circular economy. We won't be circular economy until we're not able to recycle again all our garments, again into filament, and again into fabric and a final product, which for the moment we are not.
Exactly. So the objective is what we call the net zero, which is precisely the name of the company that our next speaker, Axel Renaud, founded. And I will soon give the word to him, but first a little bit of introduction. Axel Renaud is a co-founder and CEO of Net Zero, which champions biochar as a climate solution. So different from Javier's experience, now we will shift to a B2B, a business to business, and not so much a B2C. And Axel will explain how it's changed the whole innovative aspect of the model. But prior to launching Net Zero, Axel was a managing director and senior partner at BCG, where he worked for 23 years. And he also holds a master in science in engineering and economics from École Centrale de Paris, and sorry for my pronunciation, and an MBA from INSEAD. Axel, I'm very happy that you're here, and please, whenever you want.
Great, thank you, Federica. I hope you can hear me. I'm very happy to be here. I basically, in the next 10 minutes, I'd like to show you the importance of taking carbon footprint into design and how difficult it is. And we've talked about sustainability at large and eco design. I'm just going to focus on the carbon footprint. There are many other elements, but show you how to think about it, maybe give you a few examples and show you how difficult it is, but also give you a little bit of hope towards the end. So bear with me until the end. I'm going to project a few slides. I hope it's going to work. Yes, seems to be working. Great. So I'm not going to spend too much time on climate change. I guess everyone is aware of that. The accumulation of greenhouse gases is leading us into a catastrophe if we don't act. And actually acting is going to be very difficult because the scale of what needs to be done is unprecedented. We need to halve our emissions in the next 10 years. And basically the last 2 years haven't shown any direction into reduction. So we're actually in a pretty bad place. The good news is that a number of companies in all sectors, are starting to commit to being net zero. And being net zero means basically at a date that for the moment is set by each company, having zero net emissions of greenhouse gases, i.e. reducing everything they can and then offsetting the part that they can't reuse. So I guess here you've heard a lot about it. The question is, how do we do that? The challenge, as I was saying, is that if we want to meet the Paris Agreement, which is being net zero in 2050, we need to reduce the emissions. That's the blue line, and actually we need to start removing carbon from the atmosphere, because even if we reduce everything we can, there will be remaining emissions from very hard to reduce processes, like some industrial processes, like from agriculture, for some remaining transportation and so on. And so to offset that, we need to remove carbon from the atmosphere, and that's the blue part that leads us to basically 0 in 2050. And then we need to continue removing carbon from the atmosphere if we want to keep the 1.5 degree, which is plus 1.5 versus historical temperature. Now, if we look at who's responsible for emissions, you know, we were mentioning, Javier, I think, was mentioning fashion as the third one, and indeed, fashion is the third one. There are 8 supply chains that you know, dominate emissions. They represent about half of our total emissions. When you look at them from the sourcing all the way to manufacturing, we're not talking about the downstream part, which is sometimes very important too. The usage can generate in some industries a lot of emissions. If you think, for example, you know, cleaning products, they will generate downstream a lot of emissions because they will use water, hot water, and so on and so forth. But if you just look at the supply chains all the way to manufacturing, you know, it's actually you know, quite concentrated. And the issue is, what do you do to bring those guys to net zero, individually as companies and collectively as a business? Sorry, it doesn't seem to be working. So how do you get to net zero? If you start from, you know, a product or a service and you want to design it to be net zero, the first step is really the product design. And we've had some great examples, you know, just a few minutes ago. And this, by designing, you can get to some products that are going to use, you know, less material, different type of material, and so on. Sourcing, which material are you going to source? Are you going to source them far away or close? And again, if you think about it, you can reduce emissions. Then the manufacturing process, again, you can reduce emissions. The way you distribute those products, you can reduce emissions. The way those products are used, you can also reduce emissions. And the way you recycle, or you think across the life cycle on, you know, how you're going to be reusing the end product, again, you can reduce emissions. And so it's a way, in a way, thinking step by step, but you need to think about that at the product design stage. Even if it's some downstream parts are going to be in the responsibility of manufacturing or distribution or usage, if the product design does not allow for, you know, an efficient distribution or an efficient usage in terms of CO2 emissions, then, you know, the whole thing is doomed. And so what's really difficult is thinking across the whole chain. And then there are some residual emissions, even if you've done all the steps. And here this is when the carbon removal part comes into play. And some companies say, we're going to do all of the green part, and then we'll do the carbon removal to get to net zero. But of course, the bulk of the journey needs to be done on the reduction part. I'm not going to enter in details, but you know, the cost of reducing or abating emissions across supply chain can vary a lot, because some supply chains are very intensive in energy and in fossil energy, some others much less. But just to give you an idea, you know, we're talking about anything between $12 and $120 per ton of CO2. That basically is the cost of reducing those emissions, or the cost of compensating with some carbon removal credits. In a way, you know, you could think, well, this is very expensive, $120 per ton, but what does it mean by product? You know, and that's when, in a way, the good news come in. If you bring those numbers by type of products, basically, we're actually talking about relatively small costs. So having an automotive that is net zero, so it's all sourcing and manufacturing is net zero, is a cost probably less than $600 per car. So it's basically net zero steel, net zero plastics, and net zero electronics, and then the assembly process. For fashion, it's, you know, around 2% of additional cost. For food, 4%. So actually, we're talking about small share of the cost, things that are actually not that huge. So the economic argument is a wrong argument. When people say, well, you know, we can't do that because it's going to be very costly. If you do the very steps from the design, the manufacturing, the usage, et cetera, and the final compensation of the remaining emissions, we're talking about things that are not that expensive. And so I think that's the very good news I want you to leave you with. There's hope. It's not about doubling cost of products, but it's about designing end-to-end and sourcing and manufacturing and distributing and so on in a smart way, so that basically products get to net zero emissions, and the small cost, you know, can be in many instances accepted by the customers. So there's no reason not to act. You know, it's good for the planet, it's good for marketing, it's good for employees, because employees, and especially younger generations, want to work in companies that take care about the climate. It's good for partners, suppliers, distributors, because it brings them also into that journey. It's good for investors and markets, and actually investors and markets are going to move away from companies that do not have a net zero trajectory. And it's not an additional cost, or it's not a huge additional cost. So actually, it's about being smart. It's about being determined across the whole value chain, but you know, it can be done. And what I would say is we need to do that now, not wait until the regulation or the consumer pressure forces it on companies, because then it's going to be too late. So actually now is the time to work on it, and it's perfectly doable. Thank you for your attention.
That was great, Axel and Javier. Those were amazing presentations. Thank you. I think we're going to move into Q&A, and Federica and I will share some of the questions that have come to our minds, not only now, but in our long previous conversations with our guest speakers. And then we will also take some of the questions from the attendees. I think all that we heard is tremendously connected. And my first question that will go to Julia will touch on perhaps the most critical difference in your practice, Julia, with respect to the rest of the fashion industry. And I think that critical difference resides in the word empowerment. The 3D printing technology in general came with a message of empowerment and self-production for people. And with self-production, I think what we hear, what the most positive thing that we can hear in self-production is not so much, you know, like any kind of manic activity of, you know, like using the 3D printer for anything, but rather how can you become more acquainted with what you produce, why you produce it. In other words, how can you become wiser and not smarter? Of course, you know, like recently I read this other mantra to counter the one Federica said at the beginning, that said, smart is the new smoking. I have the feeling that smart is really, you know, like potentially toxic, and we need to be wise. And for that, you know, new forms of life need to emerge, and new forms of collaboration. In your case, what you present is not necessarily, in my opinion, the utopia of, you know, suddenly we're 3D printing everything. You know, we're 3D printing our coffee mug and our glasses and our whatever, even our lighters to smoke. But we create new synergies with other forms of industry that are providing, you know, products, services, all of them with the perspective of sustainability, of positive impact, and of disruption of the old paradigms. So how do you see in the future? I'm shifting from, you know, like the question I had initially thought of, you know, which is, okay, how do you see empowerment? How do you see also this synergy, you know, between empowering users and also coexisting in what you get, you know, like from your own machines and your own technologies and what you get from the market? How do you see all that synergy in your practice and as it evolves?
I think that there's many different ways how we kind of can approach the implementation of the machines in our environment. And I think that while there might be like a lot of new and innovative ideas about changing the fashion industry or even the product design industry, I think that 3D printing technology is one technology which offers us an opportunity. And I think that it will take time, because it took 30 years to get to the point where we are now, that we can already have desktop 3D printers at home. It will take another couple of years to kind of have businesses start kind of selling their design files, and to have those machines and the people being kind of educated and advanced to utilize these machines. I think I always like to compare this to the way of how paper printers made their way into our homes and offices, right? So we used to go to the copy shop to print out our things, and today we all have a printer at home because the printers are now affordable. Obviously, if we were to produce a book, we would still go to a publisher, or like to a high-end, more quality print shop. And so I see it kind of, we are in a similar moment with the 3D printing. It's like we can already buy 3D printers for 200 euros, but we cannot, like the size of it is not that large, right? And also the kind of knowledge, like I had people in my circle who bought a 3D printer and then came to me and said, I don't know what to 3D print because I don't know how to design. And so I think there needs to be kind of a shift of, well, how do we provide those files? How do we source materials? Like, I think that's what Axel was talking about too. Like, I think that this idea of perhaps maybe first there will be like a store where you can go and you can pick up your 3D design, what you ordered online or something like that, before it will actually make its way to our homes. But I mean, the idea is fantastic. And I think that I hope that there are more people kind of looking into that, so that as a community we can kind of really collaborative figure out how something like that could look like.
Definitely. Federica, you have any other questions?
Yes, so there is one first question for Javier, and it has to do with the challenges that are involved in truly being circular. That is, designing a product is already complicated, but if you want to be sustainable, you have to involve a lot of actors, internal and external. So I would like to ask you, what are the challenges that EcoAlf is facing? And maybe by sharing them, you can also inspire other entrepreneurs or managers. Yeah, you're muted. Yeah.
Well, I mean, to be completely circular, it's a huge challenge, and I think we're still few more years needed to be so. No, obviously, the biggest challenge is to use as much components which are already recycled, if they can be recyclable, not mix them. Try to use as less materials as possible, like I said before. And I think those are the biggest challenges we have. No? But also, I think, look, for example, we have a big challenge right now in the company. We have a big discussion, no? Internal discussion, because sometimes we have internal discussions on what's more sustainable, option A or option B. No? And now it happens with a potential denim line, which we want to launch. No? We have been discussing over 6 months, and with probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, denim fabric manufacturers in the world. No? For us, the world has to go into circularity, but they claim that also has to go into durability. And durability is a sign of sustainability, which I absolutely agree. No? But for example, when we recycle the old jeans, then we get a fiber which is not very strong. So we can mix it with organic cotton, and then we can take an amazing product which can be recycled again. But it won't be as durable if we add polyester inside that yarn, for example. So the fact of adding polyester inside the cotton, which you won't feel it, can make it be around 40% more durable to that jeans. So what is it more sustainable? To be circular or to be more durable? No? And so there's not only challenges, this is not black and white, sometimes there's also grays in the middle. So we also have to, I mean, there's a lot of discussions, no? But definitely at EcoAlf, we promote circularity right now for the moment. I think that's because I think we have a huge problem with the waste. And that waste is going to eat us if we don't do something about it.
Yes, yeah, indeed. And ultimately what you want to push is for a cultural change in customers so that they learn that they don't have to go on consuming, but consuming less and better. So,
well, that's for sure. I mean, when we go to universities and we find a lot of young people, which they want to be very sustainable, but at the end of the day, they want to keep on buying 20 t-shirts of €5 per year. Well, that's not possible anymore. You have to decide. No? So what do we do? I said, well, buy less. You don't need 20 t-shirts. So I think we have a consumption problem, which we need to face. I mean, we cannot keep on consuming the way we're consuming.
Yeah. And so, well, this would link to a question that I have for Axel. And by the way, thank you for your presentation. You made a very strong argument, and it was beautiful to see the actual increase in price or in cost that you would have for each sector. That was very, very insightful. But the question would be, your company is actively helping other actors in improving their sustainability because you're a business to business. How do you see innovation in the field? And do you see any example of other companies that are also doing this thing? Because the more you help others innovate, the more you have supply chains across the globe becoming more sustainable. So you're not only helping one actor, but the whole system.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. It's true that we're a B2B company, and what we are basically doing is helping companies offset in a very serious way the remaining emissions that they are unable to reduce. We're not offsetting like some, you might have seen, some quick and cheap scheme like buy a plane ticket and then add another €5, and with this we will plant trees to offset or we will protect the forest to offset your trip. These are more like indulgences of the Pope some centuries ago. Probably very hard to demonstrate that it has any impact on climate. What we do is we really remove CO2 from the atmosphere and store it away for hundreds of years. So it's a very nascent business, which requires technology but also nature, and that's how we've built a business model around that. For those who want to know more, you can check our website netzero.green. Now, to your question, Federica, just to make it a bit broader, I think there's a whole set of businesses that are starting to emerge to help companies get to reducing their emissions and then get to net zero, because it's things around, finding new products, finding new processes, generating energy in a renewable way, finding new ways to distribute products, and so on and so forth. And so, if I have a kind of advice, or if you're thinking about launching a business today, I would go into the field, because there's zillions of opportunities along all the value chain. So it's doing some smart design, doing some smart manufacturing, measuring, doing some data and analytics to optimize this, a whole range of businesses, and actually everyone's jumping on that bandwagon. So it's not I'm playing or Net Zero, my company is playing a very, very small part in the value chain. I think the big challenge is to bring those improvements in processes, products, technologies, and so on to the large companies, to all the markets, so that actually we can produce, hopefully less. And the overconsumption that Javier was mentioning, I'm very sensitive to it. So maybe we need to produce less, but we need to produce very differently. We need to distribute very differently, and that will require huge changes. And there are many, many companies appearing like mushrooms all over the world on that.
Wow, I think it's an amazing debate, and we could spend probably the entire night, and the debate will still be open, and there's so much to do. So I really appreciate hearing all this. And I think it's, as Javier and Axel are emphasizing, is everyone's responsibility. I wanted to share one question that's coming from the audience. And if I'm not wrong, we have 5 minutes left. So this question is actually for Julia and Javier, for both of them. And so let's start with Julia, who also had something to remark based on what we've been hearing. The question for both of you is, what do you think is the next step, and what design can do to move beyond eco-design? So Julia, why don't you start, and then Javier will take the word, and then I will let Fede guide us through the end of the webinar. Julia.
Well, I have a couple of things I want to quickly say, which came up in the conversation. So one thing was, I wanted to say to Javier that I also experienced working with a startup in Scandinavia with the ocean waste plastic, which are kind of transferring that into 3D printing filament in Switzerland. And my experience was that there's a lot of other designers who work with this material, and they always say, like, we use 3D printing with ocean waste plastic. But what I learned is they are actually the only ones who use 100% or like 95% recycled plastic in their filaments. So I think it's always really like important as a designer when you like source a new material to understand like the percentages of how much recycled plastic is in there. And my experience was similar. What you said is like that with this 95%, 100% ocean waste plastic is very, very difficult to 3D print high quality, because the material just behaves very, very different than if you work with like a new plastic material. So that was one experience I wanted to share. And in regards to your question, Manuel, I think that one thing what I find interesting, maybe that is an answer, but what I find interesting is with this technology of the 3D printing, you could imagine that whatever you use in the material to produce your design, if let's say half a year later you want a new design, you can have a machine next to it which recycles that plastic, and then you 3D print your new bag or your new clothing, what you wear, so that you kind of work with that. And I think the PLA, just to the question which is in the chat, also is a biodegradable material. So while those are new materials which are manufactured, they have certain ability to either be recycled, biodegradable, and so on. And I think that just what I have done in my own work, I have always tried to make the designs not look like an eco design or so. Like I've always, like, I remember when I grew up, like, I think there was always those kind of images, like those eco designs always would have certain colors and they would have certain materials embedded. And I think a lot of things have changed in the last 10 years. And there are materials which look non-eco design, like I think, and then you can make them like they look new. So where you no longer actually know or immediately are aware that this is an eco design, right? So I think that that's where we have to get, where we no longer hype a product because it is made out of a certain material or a certain utilizing a certain method. It should be standard. It should be like, we should just no longer have to justify or like why we would need to use that material. That's, I think, where we all need to get.
Absolutely. Okay, Javier.
Bueno, first of all, Julia, I cannot agree more. I think, first of all, talking about the ocean plastic, well, to be honest, every day I meet somebody who works with ocean plastic, and at the end of the day, when you start talking with them, it actually doesn't come from the ocean. Because as you well know, a lot of people call ocean plastic what they collect 2 miles from the beaches, which is a joke, in my opinion, no? But we have one of the biggest sports company in the world, which calls it ocean plastic. And then when you talk with them, they consider that everything which is 2 miles from the beach is going to finish up in the ocean, so they call it ocean plastic. Probably the most famous sneaker now made from the ocean, and it's not from the ocean. We take the waste from the bottom of the ocean, I mean, 300 meters down. And that's a huge project with the fishermen, and it's quite unique. And obviously, the result of that plastic, as you well say, is very in a much worse shape because of the sea, the salt, the sun. So at the end of the day, look, the first time we launched our filament, which we call it coming from ocean plastic, it was 10%. It was 100% recycled filament, but it was 10% content from the ocean, 90% recycled polyester from land. Okay, because of what you said, it's very difficult to have a great quality and to have a very stable quality all along the different productions. Right now, the last production we have made is 35% ocean content and 65% land content. Okay, so we never work with 100% recycled content from the bottom of the ocean. Okay, and then I agree absolutely with you that it should be a must. No, I think it should be something which shouldn't be like the strange thing to do. No, because I think we're in a moment where what you do is not enough anymore. I think how you do it is much more important. I think anybody can make a building, but how is that efficient in terms of energy, that building? No? Or anybody can make a t-shirt, no? But what footprint does that t-shirt leave in the world? So I think this is not anymore about what you do, but how you do it. And that has a lot to do with eco-design.
Thank you, Javier. Absolutely. And thank you for the nice debate that is merging and bridging design and business. And now we are negative in time. So I would like to leave the floor to Merichel for her graphic summary. Thank you, Merichel. You're muted.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Hello, thank you. I wanted to share, the print I made during this hour, and I wanted to make a general and an essential view, okay, and of the universe and our state in there. And I wanted to show that when humans appear in the earth, we appear with needs, okay? And when humanity arrive and had these needs for survival, comfort, these needs are the possibilities and the way how we let the needs define ourselves. I think that the needs is which are defining our life and possibilities of selves. And I wanted to finish with a thought that maybe is design which is maybe is through the design where we are designing ourselves and our possibilities in the universe. Maybe we could transcend the earth sometime, but it will be, I think, through the needs and through how we design to it. And this is it. Thank you.
That is wonderful, Merichel. It's like projecting us on a completely different and very deep dimension, giving us a lot of food for thought for the rest of the night. So I would just like to ask you if you can please stop sharing this. I will, thank you. I will share the information about next meeting that will take place next week, October 21st. And we will move from sustainable design production to product service design. So how to incorporate a service element always with the goal of reducing the impact that our companies have on the environment. We will have speakers like Robert Metzke and Merlin Bisso, Declan Rackling-Jardin, and the moderators will be Pilar Cortada and Ignacio Marcos. So I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I loved it. I'm biased, and I'll be happy to see you next week. Gracias a todos nuestros speakers. Thank you, speakers.
Thanks. Bye.
Have a beautiful weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you all.
Gracias. Ciao.